All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for this presentation on presenting your research paper. So my name is Matt Saldana. I work for the Teaching, Learning, and Professional Development Center, but also run another program called the Presentation and Communication Effectiveness, or PACE program. And the whole idea behind this program is that it prepares undergraduate students for any sort of presentation that they may have coming up in terms of like a conference or something like that. So this is a great way for you to get some practice or at least get some tips and tricks on how to make your presentation. So hopefully you find something that's useful out of this video. And of course, always feel free to keep us in mind if you do have another conference presentation coming up, whether you're doing another oral presentation or if you're doing a poster or something along those lines. Feel free to let us know. We'd love to help you get prepared for that. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So first off, of course, congratulations. This is a big one, right? Because taking that extra step and doing an oral presentation as opposed to a poster is a big deal. So in terms of the numbers, so there's roughly 300 or so students who submitted abstracts, and only a portion of that, a very small portion, I believe less than 50 of those abstracts were selected for an oral presentation. So pat yourselves on the back. This is awesome. That's great. It is an additional challenge. And giving the paper presentation, I tend to call them a podium presentation, mainly because you typically stand at a podium and then you give your presentation. So that's kind of how I've always thought of them. But either way, it's certainly a highlight of a researcher's career, having that opportunity to be the center of attention. Now, these presentations can be short, they can be long. We do have some guidelines that we'll follow that we'll touch on here in just a moment. But this is certainly an opportunity for you to have the entire room to yourself, have that attention, and then you're able to give your presentation that way. Again, it's the audience is going to give you their undivided attention. And in most cases, the audience is going to be pretty interested in what you're presenting on. So that's something that's always encouraging, that you've got folks in the room who are going to be interested in what you're presenting on. So this could mean collaboration. It could mean if you're further in your career, it could mean an opportunity to find a job or maybe some funding for your research. So it certainly is something that a lot of presenters are really excited to do. Remember that while you do have everyone's attention, you still want to make sure that you convey your message in a memorable and effective manner. And that's really what we'll talk about today. Remember that this particular conference is about the impact, right? So as you kind of think about how you're going to structure your presentation, make sure that impact is central to your presentation. So your research is done. You should have all of that pretty well ready to go. But the one thing that you will definitely need to do is communicate that impact that your research is having on your impact area. So as you kind of frame that presentation, as you start to think about what it is you're going to put in your presentation and what it is that you might leave out, make sure that the impact is a central part of your overall presentation. So let's go ahead and jump right in here. Some of the first things, of course, that you'll want to know is, what are the requirements, right? So understanding the requirements, and of course, this is not just for this particular conference, the undergraduate research conference. It could be for any conference, right? And also not necessarily a conference if you're giving a speech to a high school class, or say you're further down the road and you're giving a talk to a bunch of undergrads or something like that. You need to understand the requirements, because that's really going to help you frame your overall presentation. So you want to make sure that you understand those requirements, and be sure to ask questions. If something isn't clear, ask questions, because that's the only way that you're going to get the information that you need. And I highly encourage you to reach out to the organizers as often as necessary, even if something isn't totally clear, or if something, just maybe there's some sort of interpretation that maybe doesn't quite you're still not sure of, or you just want to verify something, reach out to the organizers. I think that would help the organizers make sure that they're communicating the right information, and also you'll be able to get that information that you need as well. So again, understanding those requirements for the URC, the Undergraduate Research Conference, you will have a specific set of guidelines. And typically, the guidelines are usually set up and mainly in terms of time, right? We want to make sure that if we have a full days of presentations, we want to make sure that we give everybody the equal amount of time to give their presentation. So you don't want to have 4 hours for 4 different presentations, and the first presenter gets an hour and a half, the second presenter gets an hour, the third presenter gets another hour and a half, and then the fourth presenter only gets 5 minutes, right? We definitely don't want that to happen. But for this particular conference, there are some prizes that are to be won for these presentations. So these guidelines are set up not just for time's sake, but also to make sure that everybody gets the equal is on equal footing as these presentations will have an element of judging to them. So these presentations will take place upstairs in the Student Union Building. And this is one thing that I always tell people to do if they have that opportunity, is to go look at the space, go get an idea of how big the room is, get an idea of the chairs, how the chairs are set up. If chairs aren't set up, at least you get an opportunity to see how big that room is. Some rooms are big, some rooms are small, and that's really going to help you kind of think about that. As you get ready to do your practice, right? So if you're in a small room where there's maybe 20 chairs, so at most, if there's 20 chairs, there's 20 people, maybe 4 or 5 standing if the room is completely full. So you're presenting to anywhere between 20 to 30 people, right? And so that's much different. You would prepare for that much different if you were doing that versus a room of 300 people. Okay, so if you do have that opportunity to look at that space, I highly recommend doing that. And even if you don't have that opportunity, say that your conference is, we'll say it's in Boston, right? And you're not quite sure, maybe it's in the Boston Auditorium. I don't know, that may or may not be an actual place, but let's say that it's in the Boston Auditorium, has a lot of rooms in there. You look online, you're not really sure which room it's going to be in. So ask the organizers, hey, give me an idea, how big is this room? Some things that you might want to know is size of the room, like in terms of it's a 20 by 20 foot room, or whatever that may be, but also how many folks might be in that room. Because again, that will help you kind of think about how you're going to present, and also will help with the nerves, right? Presenting in front of a smaller group, like the size of your class, is going to be a little bit different than, say, you present in front of the largest classroom you've ever been in. So the way you do that will help you with a little bit of that anxiety, so that it will kind of hopefully calm the fears, calm those nerves. And that's really a really good way to help you do that, by kind of having a little bit more of an idea of what that space looks like. So and some of you may have already seen it, some of you may already be familiar with those rooms, but check those out. They're going to be the rooms in the hallways. All right. So each presenter, so all the presenters will get 8 minutes to give their presentation and 2 minutes for a question and answer session. Now, again, that is not a very long presentation. It's 8 minutes and to give your presentation, and 2 minutes for Q&A. So I have a timer right here. We have just now crossed the 9-minute threshold. So I've been talking for about 9 minutes. Okay, so that kind of gives you a frame of what that looks like, so that as you start to put your presentation together, you kind of have an idea of what 8 to 10 minutes feels like. Now, one of the things that I always, of course, recommend for people to do is to just get a timer, get your phone, get your watch, get whatever you may have, set up a timer for 8 minutes, and just kind of sit there thinking about what you might say, thinking about all of the important pieces that you want to put in your presentation. Because again, that will help you figure out what you can put in and what you need to take out of your presentation. So again, thinking about that from that early stage will help you, again, put your presentation together, and also help you with those nerves. I think the one thing that I think will concern most of us as we get ready to do these presentations is those nerves, right? Because it has been a while since we've been in front of folks. And just right there, that was 10 minutes. Okay, so again, not a lot of time, not a lot of time at all. So again, when you kind of think about your presentation, what you're going to put in it and how many slides you may want to have in there, we'll talk about that a little bit more here in just a moment. But again, you have 8 minutes for your presentation and 2 minutes for a Q&A. And so a lot of folks ask me how prepared they should be for a question and answer session. Remember that 2 minutes for a Q&A is probably just enough for 1, maybe 2 questions. Okay, because by the time you finish presentation, okay, question and answer. Somebody says I have a question, they raise their hand. By the time they say the question, you take it in, you're able to kind of figure out what the question is and then answer it. It's probably going to be close to 2 minutes already, unless it's a very short, question, or it's something that you can, quickly and easily answer. Probably going to get 1, maybe 2. If you get to 3, you've probably gone beyond your time. And so at that point, the moderator would probably shut that down, and then you could catch up with whoever asked that question later on. But I wouldn't over prepare for your questions and answers, mainly because that's really difficult to do. And also, there's not going to be a lot of time for that. Okay. Now, do keep in mind that you will have to submit these slides in early. But I always say one of the things that, again, as in terms of preparation, in terms of being, having all of my bases covered, I always carry a copy of my presentation on a flash drive. Well, you can see this one. It's kind of it's a flash drive. It's a kind of a industrial little flash drive. But anyway, I have that with me. I have my slides are on it. It's the only thing that's on it. Maybe a copy of the paper or something like that. But I have that on me. There's a high likelihood that you won't need that. But again, if you know anything about technology, perhaps you've been in a classroom where the projector doesn't work, or the laptop, somebody didn't plug it in and the laptop battery goes out. Any number of things may happen. Of course, this is a well-run conference, but those things happen. And it also, again, in terms of anxiety, in terms of those nerves, having that copy on me, really makes me feel comfortable that even if the presenter said, or the moderator says, oh, no, we don't have your slides, I have a copy right here. Boom, right there. Boom, right into the computer. I'm ready to go. All right. So, and again, that just helps me, just kind of keep those nerves down. So understand those requirements. Again, you can find all this information on the TRUE website. So true.ttu.edu, and that will take you to their website. And you can find all of your requirements there for the oral presentations, as well as any of the poster presentations if you know anyone who's looking for that information as well. All right, so this is something that's very interesting that a lot of people kind of skip over. They maybe don't think too much about it, but one thing that you definitely want to do is think through your slides, right? So for this particular conference, for this event, you may have as many slides as you want. But the next question you should ask yourself is, should you have as many slides as you want? Remember, 8 minutes, okay? 8 minutes is all you're gonna have. So kind of a rule of thumb, and general rule of thumb that I think of always is to think about 1 minute per slide. Okay, and so a little while ago, we talked about the 9 minutes, the 10 minutes, that was, that was 3 slides, right? That was a title slide, a congratulations slide, and then a understand the requirements slide. All right, so that was, realistically, that was 2 slides, and that lasted me more than 8 minutes. Okay, so you don't need a lot of slides to communicate your information, communicate that impact, okay? So in general, a good rule of thumb, if you are going to have your slides, if you are going to have more than a couple of slides, for an 8-minute presentation, 8 slides max. And that goes back to the 1 minute per slide kind of general rule, if you will, right? And the reason that is a good kind of rule of thumb is if you can get through the slide in 1 minute, then you're going to have a slide that's not too cluttered, right? You're going to have a slide that's effective, a slide that you're going to be able to use, get through, and move on. Okay, you don't want to dwell on your slides too much. You want to be able to get that information out and then move on to the next slide. Again, remember, you have 8 minutes. Okay, and so where 8 minutes may think, you may think that 8 minutes is not a big deal, or maybe that's forever. 8 minutes when you're standing up in front of a crowd is not that long. Okay, so again, 8-minute presentations, 8 minutes max, but also use the number that you're comfortable with, right? If you're comfortable with, if you have 3 really good slides that you feel like you can do the whole 8 minutes with, then stick with those 3 slides. If you feel like you need 2, go with 2, right? If you've done a 3-minute thesis type competition, you get 1. Okay, and if you feel comfortable with 1 slide being able to do your entire presentation, then great, go with that, right? Again, there's the elements of a slide, we'll talk about those here in a minute. You still want to, keep up with those, but don't feel like you have to have 8 slides. Don't feel like you only have to have 2 slides, right? Use the number of slides that you're comfortable with, right? And I call those comfort slides, right? Because I'm comfortable with those. And also, I know exactly what's on them. I know exactly what they look like. And I know exactly how I'm going to use those slides, right? For my presentation. Okay, and the big thing is, of course, the slides are a supplement of your story, right? They are not a replacement, right? I don't want anybody to just put a bunch of text on these slides and then stand up there at the podium for 8 minutes. For 1 minute, you have your watch and then you hit, okay, the timer starts, and you bring up that first slide and you have people read your slide for 1 minute. Then you move to the next, and to the next, and to the next, right? That's not what we want, right? The slides are a supplement, okay? They are not a replacement, okay? And in terms of how you should kind of think about your slides, this is a great tip that I got a long time ago. Think of your slides as a billboard, right? They're short, they're straight to the point, right? There's not there's not a lot of time for you to look at that billboard, right? I think in most cases you get just a few seconds to look at it, and you look at it and then it makes its impact, right? So if it's something that you're interested in, you're absolutely going to figure out. I saw that slide on a cool video, or a movie. So I'm gonna go check that out later. Let's see what that's all about, right? But what got my attention was that slide, or was that billboard. Okay, so again, the billboard doesn't have an entire paper, doesn't have all this text on it. It's usually a funny picture or something that grabs your attention, right? It's short, it's straight to the point, and so that's a great way to think about it as you're starting to put your slides together. So in terms of the actual slide itself, think about your design. Okay, simple rules here, of course, keep the slide clean. All right, so again, there's a lot of debate on, how much you should put on there. What kind of, should you use bullet points? Should you use a circle bullet points? Should you use the square ones? Should you use numbers? Whatever you decide to do, keep the slide clean, right? Keep the text clean, keep the design clean, right? It's simple, think about those simple contrasting. This is black text on a white background. Pretty straightforward, okay? Less is more. Again, the slides do not replace you, all right? So again, if you have really, really wordy slides, or you have a lot of images that have words on them that people are gonna have to dart around to try to read, okay? Again, what is that gonna do? That's gonna take the attention off of the presenter, and it's gonna put it on the slide, okay? And again, in order to give and deliver an effective oral presentation, it's not about the slides, okay? This is not a slides competition. This is an oral presentation, okay? So you may have the coolest designs on your slides, right? But people aren't gonna remember the slides. They're gonna remember what was said, okay? So how do you use those slides, right? We wanna make sure that we don't make our slides too cluttered. We wanna keep them clean. Less is more. Slides do not replace you. You want to make sure that what you do use is readable. Okay, so this is where a lot of folks I see will take, they'll have their paper, they'll just take a screenshot of that and then just stick that on the slide. Okay, and that might be okay for some things, but for something like this, right, that's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough to read. It's not gonna be something that folks are gonna be able to do. If there's any kind of one negative thing that you could do on a slide, it's just to take just a screenshot of something and stick it on a slide. Okay. In terms of slide design, that image is actually a picture. So as you kind of make that picture bigger or smaller, right, the text can either get really pixelated, hard to read. You may not be able to interpret that. It will just not, it won't go well. Okay, so make sure that your slides are readable. Easy way to do that: type up your slides, push the computer away from you as far as you can on the table, maybe an arm's length away, take a few steps back, and then look at your slides and see if you can read them. If you can read them, then that's a pretty good indication that those slides are very readable. Okay. You also want to think about the contrast and the colors, right? If you are going to use some sort of background, maybe your lab uses a particular background for their for all of their presentations. That's fine, of course. But think about the background. Think about the color of your text. Okay. You don't want those two to wash each other out. All right, so if you have the opportunity to make these slides on your own, again, I recommend just a simple, easy, open up the PowerPoint and then just use what we have here, right? We have black text on a white background. You could, of course, switch them up. You could do a black background and white text, but you want to make sure that you think about those contrasts and those colors. And again, another easy way to do that: type up your slides, push the computer back, take a few steps back, okay, and then look at your slides. Can you read them? And then, the one thing, of course, is to be honest with yourself, right? Maybe you know exactly what it says, but can you actually read that, right? And then when in doubt, get somebody else, a friend, a colleague, someone else. And if they have any sort of hesitation, change it. Change it. Trust me, just change it. All right, so think about contrast and colors. If you do find that your slide does have a lot of words, consider using a picture instead. And I see this a lot if people want to talk about their methods, right? Maybe you are testing two chemicals. You have this really cool, test setup where you've got these, two test tubes and they're attached to some apparatus, and then there's some beakers, and then there's maybe a little bit of some flames or something, and you've got this really cool setup and you're describing it all. What if you just use a picture instead, right? What if you just use the picture, and then as you're going along, you see the picture, you see the image, and you could say, okay, so this is what we did, right? You can see the two test tubes, right? You can see the Bunsen burner with the flame. You can see the beakers. You can see all this stuff. And then now you've got something that people can look at. They're interested in that, right? You've got their attention. And also, you probably didn't have to write all that out, right? Because that's stuff you already know, right? But again, if you're going to use a picture, use a quality picture, right? Use something that you took, something that is a high resolution, so that you can put that picture on your slides and people will know what it is. Maybe not necessarily know what it is, but at least be able to see it. And then whenever you say, oh yeah, this is a beaker, right? And then they would say, oh, it's a beaker, right? I don't study chemistry, but yeah, I see that now. That's a beaker. Great, awesome. That answered my question. Okay, so again, if you're going to use those pictures, make sure they're quality pictures, high quality pictures. And usually if you take the pictures yourself or somebody else has taken that picture, those are usually going to be quality pictures. The ones that I would, of course, caution you on are any pictures that you get off of the internet, because you don't know what that resolution may be. If you try to make it larger, it may become pixelated. So you may have to find another picture. So think about that. And of course, avoid overthinking your slides. Right, this is common, right? You start to put things together, you start to overthink them, you start to think, oh, did I leave this out? Maybe I should put that in, right? Again, remember, this is an 8-minute presentation, right? And if anybody is interested in maybe something you left out, maybe you didn't talk about your methods, right? Maybe you just kind of said we follow standard practices for the industry or for what it is that we're doing. If somebody's interested in that, they can come to you afterwards. Okay, so don't overthink your slides. Again, we have an 8-minute presentation. I will tell you now that most people won't remember the slides. What they will remember is what you talked about. So again, keep that in mind. And you want to make sure that if nothing else, you want to make sure that you are designing your slides so that you can communicate that impact. Okay, remember, keep that in mind, the impact. All right. I've got some examples here of what a good slide looks like, and some things to watch out for. So Here's one here, and I see this one pretty regularly, actually. So this slide here, this is again kind of the reverse. I use kind of the opposite of this. I have a black text on a white background. This is reverse, so it's black background and white text. But you see down here, we're talking about what we have, the word succession problems. And so sometimes when people have an animation, they don't test out what the animation is when they put the slideshow on. So this one is something that's going to do something kind of weird, but it doesn't actually like go away, right? It's already there. So if you have like a build, like you have one slide and it has all these builds, make sure that you run through that beforehand, okay? I know a number of people who will put their slides together and they won't actually put them through a slideshow. They will just say, here are my slides, right? And so you definitely want to make sure that you run through your slideshow at least once or twice before you submit that. Because once you're submitted, it's gone. No changes can be made. Okay, so that's something to watch out for. But again, if you are going to use something a little bit different than the traditional black text on the white background, this is great here. If there is something like this that you want to do, you want your titles to stand out. So this one is a good one. It's large text. It's a great contrasting color. You got that dark background, that bright text there. That looks great. You also want to avoid any of the crazy animations for your bullet points. So you want to try to stay away from some of these, managing upwards and sideways, where it kind of has that weird effect where they kind of slide in together, or something like this where they kind of, appear, like not really appear, because the appear is like just boom, here they are, but it's like this, like it looks like mini blinds, I think that's what it's called. And so down here, of course, we have succession problems, and I kind of relay that it's kind of an interesting build. And I have been in a presentation where every single build on that did this right here, spun around. Okay. And things like that, right? Things like that. I mean, they're kind of neat, they're kind of cool, but think about this again. If you're having to wait for that thing to stop spinning around, that's time that you're waiting and you're not talking about your research, your impact. Okay. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to waste your time. Just use, if you do want animations, right? Just simply use appear. It's there, boom, right? Just like if we go back up here, is like the title right here, it's not there and it's there. It's not there and it's there, right? It's easy. It's not a lot of going on. It doesn't distract or anything like that. These other builds can be distracting and can take away from you as a presenter. Awesome. All right. So again, but something like this, if this is what your slide was going to look like the black background, you've got that yellow, bright yellow, bold text for your title, and then the white text there. That's a good build, right? That's a good contrast right there. Easy to see. I know what you're saying, and also it's clean. It's very, very clean. If you want to use charts and graphs, I highly encourage that. I spend a lot of time building charts and graphs for my own research, and this to me is where I live, right? I love to do this. I can talk to you about this chart, this graph. I can make this last for an hour, right? Easy. And because there's a lot to unpack, there's a lot that we could talk about. If you do something like this, again, if you're comparing two things, make sure your lines are different colors. Make sure that, I have red and blue here. If that's, that's pretty good. I think that's kind of the Excel default. But if you are going to do that, if you are going to have a lot of different lines and they're comparing things or whatever that may be, make sure you can distinguish between those lines. Include your legend, okay, over here. Include your axes. What are they? What do they mean, right? Again, those are things that should be there, right? And if they're not there, people are going to wonder what's going on, and that's going to take away from your presentation, right? So again, you can explain this all day, right? You can talk about here's the peaks, here are the valleys, right? This is what we're comparing. You can talk about that all day, but you don't want folks to be curious about what I mean, if this wasn't here, what does that mean, right? If we didn't have a legend, what do the lines mean, right? Where you don't want folks to be distracted by that. You want them to look at that and say, oh, okay, well, I know that The best scores were out of region 3. The worst scores were out of region, looks like region 1. Okay, so that would be a great way to do that, and making sure that if you do have charts and graphs, whatever those look like, whatever program you're using, be sure to test those out on your slide, because you usually can scale those up pretty well, but make sure you have all of your appropriate labels. Okay. So again, how to give your oral presentation, right? So we're going to do this live and in person. There's going to be no Zoom, no cameras, nothing like that. So you want to be as well prepared as you possibly can. Now I say practice the real thing here, and so what that entails is you going to see the room, see the space, getting an idea what that looks like. Right? You go home, get into your room, take some chairs. Right? I'll do that. I'll take chairs out of my dining room. I'll line them up. And then I'll kind of give a mock presentation. And again, that just kind of helps get my mind ready, so that whenever I see that, I think of it like studying, right? If you study the material over and over, once you get into the room, you're ready to do your thing. You're ready to perform, right? And so I think of practicing like the real thing is doing something like that. Put some chairs out. Have some friends, have some family there. You can do this in front of your pets if you want to, right? So get that idea, get that feel of how you want to kind of work the room. Are you going to look side to side? Are you going to start at the back of the row to move to the front of the row? I mean, how are you going to do that, right? And so all those things or a little bit of practice can help you, again, calm those nerves, all right? I always try to write a very detailed outline whenever possible. Again, that helps me figure out where I'm starting and where I'm going, right? And the map to get there, right? That way, if I feel like I'm leaving something out that's really important, I can figure out easily and quickly where that goes, all right? So I'm able to make those adjustments easily. And so it helps me, again, think about those things, frame it, and then build it out. Of course, you want to be focused and concise. Again, 8 minutes. We have 8 minutes here, so don't get into the nitty-gritty details. Don't talk about, the time of day that you collected your sample. Noon on a Thursday, it was slightly cloudy. Leave that stuff out. Okay, be focused, be concise. Know the audience. Okay, so for this particular conference, it is going to be the audience is going to be a non-specialist. So if you're studying biology, for example, and you're talking about plant evolution in the desert in the Southwest, okay, there's a pretty good chance that nobody else in the room is studying that. Okay, so you need to know that if you're going to get really technical with the words that you're using, like we're talking about the Southwest, or we're using some acronyms, you may need to define those, okay, so that people can follow what's going on. That way if they can't follow you, then they're not going to pay attention. And then you're not going to be able to really communicate that impact. Okay, so know the audience, right? For this one, I'll tell you, non-specialist, but if you're preparing for something else, it may be a specialist, so you could probably get away with some of those well-known industry acronyms, okay? Communicate those key ideas and impacts. That is going to be what is, in terms of the pie of points, the largest slice of that pie is going to be that impact. Okay, so make sure you communicate that. Again, nitty gritty details, the time of day that you did your research, how you set up your test, all those things, save most of that stuff for later, right? Again, you have 8 minutes, okay? And so if you do find that you are doing your practice and you're constantly over 8 minutes, look at it. If you have a lot of those nitty gritty details in there, take them out. Right, save that stuff for later. Let people, if they are interested in that level of detail, have them read your paper. Have them connect with you later. Okay, we would want to avoid that during this presentation. What we do want to focus on is, of course, those key areas, key ideas, and definitely those impacts. Okay, try to control your voice and your motion. Right, I know some folks who, when they get up in front of a crowd, they start talking really fast, right? Normally we're just kind of having a casual conversation, but sometimes people just start and then they just take off, right? Again, try to control your voice. Some of you may be movers, right? Movers and shakers. You move your hands, you move your feet, you tap on your legs or whatever. Maybe you like, wrap your nails on or knuckles on the podium, right? Try to control that stuff. Okay. You know yourself, you know best how you present. Okay. You know your mannerisms. And if you're not sure, again, do some of that practice, figure out what it is. Okay. That way you're able to give a solid presentation and people aren't distracted by maybe you cracking your knuckles or maybe you do too much with your hands. People aren't focused on that. They're focused on you as the presenter, not the hand motions or the knee motions, the leg motions, or whatever it may be there, right? Also think about the microphone, right? Are you somebody who's naturally loud? Maybe you take a step back. If you're somebody who's kind of quiet, maybe you move that microphone closer to you. Okay, so think about those things, right? You know how you present best. Okay, and so you should take those into account as you're preparing. And also, when you look good, you feel good. Okay, if you're wearing the clothes that you're going to wear, and I of course recommend that you put those clothes on. Don't wait until the day of your presentation to get that brand new shirt out of the bag. Right, wear everything you're going to wear ahead of time so that you know what you're going to feel like. If it's a tie, maybe you're not comfortable with, maybe you figure out how to maybe you get a different tie, right? If you're going to do a lot of arm presenting, like look up here, right? Make sure that you're comfortable doing that. Make sure that you're wearing clothes that are going to be comfortable as you're giving that presentation, right? So again, all of the practice, what I'll tell anybody is, of course, practicing the real thing, right? Setting up the room as best as you can, setting up a PowerPoint as best as you can, right? On a screen, wear the clothes that you're going to wear, right? As best as you can. Think about your feet, okay? Maybe standing up for 8 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. Maybe that hurts your feet. Maybe your shoes are going to make your feet sore, right? Think about all of those things, right? And practice it. Practice that real thing. Now, that's going to be a big key, right? And make sure that you also communicate those impacts, right? So practice the real thing, making sure that your presentation has your key ideas along with those impacts. And those are going to be the things that we're looking for in your presentation. All right, so again, feel free to ask me any sort of questions that you may have. My email is down there. Again, about this particular conference, or if you're going to something else in the near future, let me know, right? We'd love to get you, get you a time where we can set up maybe a practice space, or maybe we can just talk through some of the ideas, some of the options for that. We'd love to help you prepare for that. Again, that's what we're here for. And hopefully, if you've got another presentation coming up, you'll think about us. So again, if you do have any questions about this particular conference and you want to shoot me an email, please do so. But if you could, please put URC in the subject line. So I'll make sure that that's a priority email that I'll get to as quickly as possible. So from here on, I'll wish you the best of luck. I'll be there for the presentations. Hopefully they go smoothly. And of course, if there are any questions, feel free to reach out. Let me know at any time. So, all right, everyone, good luck out there, and we'll look forward to your presentation. Thanks, everyone. Bye.